The INFJ door slam is a phenomenon that occurs when an INFJ, typically known for their empathy, patience, and deep emotional investment in others, decides to abruptly and completely cut someone out of their life. While it may appear sudden or cold from the outside, the door slam is almost always the culmination of a long and often painful internal process. To understand the INFJ door slam, it is important to first appreciate the internal workings of the INFJ personality. INFJs are known for their deep insights into people's emotions and motivations, their desire to help and connect meaningfully, and their idealistic visions for what relationships and humanity could be. This often makes them attentive, generous, and loyal companions. However, this same depth of emotional processing can make them highly sensitive to betrayal, manipulation, or persistent emotional drain. When an INFJ invests in a person, it is rarely shallow. They tend to form profound emotional bonds, often seeing potential and good in people long after others have given up. Being an INFJ can be tough sometimes. That's why we have put together resources that will help you navigate the INFJ life with clarity and purpose. Check out our INFJ Mastery course and INFJ ebook. You can get them using the links in the description of this video. Despite their outward calm and diplomacy, INFJs are not emotionally passive. They tend to have a strong internal moral code and a clear sense of right and wrong. If someone repeatedly violates this code through lies, manipulation, abuse, or betrayal, the INFJ begins to retreat inwardly. Often, this process is not visible to others. Because INFJs dislike confrontation and can be conflict avoidant, they may continue to act pleasant on the surface while internally distancing themselves. They might rationalize the behavior, hoping for change, or try to communicate their needs subtly at first. However, when they reach a breaking point, when they feel their emotional boundaries have been irreparably violated, they may choose to sever ties completely. The door slam, then, is not a moment of impulsive anger. It is a deeply considered act of self-preservation. INFJs may stop responding to messages, block the person on social media, avoid all forms of contact, and remove shared photos, letters, or reminders from their environment. There is usually no dramatic goodbye or emotional plea. Instead, there is silence, a quiet but resolute assertion of independence from further harm. It can be disorienting or even devastating for the person on the receiving end, who may not have realized how much damage had accumulated. While some might perceive this as heartless, to the INFJ, it is often a last resort. It is not that they don't care. In fact, it is often because they have cared too much for too long, and continuing to engage in the relationship becomes emotionally untenable. The INFJ door slam is a way to reclaim their energy, dignity, and mental peace. After prolonged emotional strain, cutting someone off can feel like the only way to break a cycle of pain or toxicity. This action can be permanent or temporary, depending on the circumstances and the INFJ's capacity for healing. In some cases, if the offending person sincerely changes or offers genuine remorse, and if enough time has passed, the INFJ may reopen the door, though often with new boundaries and emotional distance. However, in many cases, once the door is slammed, it stays shut. The emotional toll on the INFJ should not be underestimated. Despite the strength it takes to carry out a door slam, the aftermath can bring guilt, grief, and self-doubt. INFJs might question whether they gave up too soon or wonder if they could have done more. Yet, over time, most come to understand that protecting their inner world is not only acceptable, it is necessary. Being empathic and idealistic does not mean tolerating behavior that undermines one's well-being. The INFJ door slam is a paradox. It is both an act of finality and of healing. It illustrates the depth of the INFJ's emotional landscape, capable of great compassion, but also of resolute self-defense. It reflects a profound truth about boundaries, that even the most forgiving hearts have limits, and that preserving one's inner peace can sometimes mean walking away without looking back. The INFJ door slam, while seemingly drastic or even brutal to an outsider, is a deeply nuanced emotional mechanism, one that says as much about the INFJ's inner world as it does about the relationship in question. The action is not rooted in vengeance, spite, or manipulation. Rather, It stems from an overwhelming need to reclaim peace after prolonged emotional erosion. The idealism of INFJs is also what makes betrayal or mistreatment cut so deeply. INFJs don't just experience disappointment when people fail them. They often feel it on a soul level. When someone violates their trust repeatedly or consistently disregards their emotional boundaries, INFJs may feel spiritually exhausted. It's not uncommon for them to carry the emotional weight of relationships long past their expiration. They may try to fix things quietly, introspectively, hoping that empathy and patience will repair the damage. But with each instance of disrespect or deception, a private tally is kept, one rarely shared openly. The INFJ may go silent, become harder to reach, or emotionally withdraw even while still physically present. This isn't manipulation. It's a quiet detachment as they prepare to protect themselves from further hurt. The actual moment of the door slam often seems out of nowhere to the person on the receiving end, largely because INFJs typically avoid confrontation. They may not voice every grievance. They may smile through pain, give the benefit of the doubt again and again, or rationalize toxic behavior. But the silence that follows a door slam isn't passive-aggressive, it's final. It is the INFJ saying, "I've said everything I could, even if only in my heart, and I have no more to give." The INFJ doesn't just shut the door. They often lock it, close the windows, and draw the curtains. They may erase every trace of the relationship from their life in an effort to begin again without emotional residue. This can be incredibly difficult for the INFJ. The very act of cutting someone off contradicts their own instincts to help, heal, and understand. They may grieve not just the loss of the person, but the loss of what the relationship could have been. And because INFJs internalize so much, they may blame themselves for not being stronger, for not leaving sooner, or for feeling hurt in the first place. But this grief is part of the cleansing process. It allows the INFJ to reclaim parts of themselves that were slowly being lost. Interestingly, the door slam is not always the end of love or caring. An INFJ may still think of the person fondly, still hope for their healing, and still wish them well from a distance. But emotional proximity becomes untenable. The INFJ isn't punishing the other person. They're preserving their own emotional integrity. Sometimes, the door slam is about survival, an emotional firewall constructed to prevent a breakdown or loss of self. It's important to recognize that not all INFJs door slam in the same way. For some, it's literal and physical, blocked numbers, deleted messages, moved furniture. For others, it's quieter, internal disengagement, emotional closure, and the slow fading of effort. In professional or familial settings, where physical removal isn't possible, the door slam may manifest as extreme emotional detachment, where the INFJ becomes polite, formal, and utterly inaccessible on a personal level. The act can also serve as a profound moment of self-definition. INFJs often struggle with people-pleasing tendencies and porous emotional boundaries. The door slam, painful as it may be, often marks a milestone in their personal growth, proof that they can honor their worth, defend their peace, and choose themselves. In a world that often takes advantage of quiet, empathic people, the INFJ door slam is not just an ending. It's a declaration. I will not be diminished by this relationship anymore. Even when the INFJ walks away, they usually do so without bitterness. They rarely campaign to turn others against the person, seek revenge, or spread negativity. Their exit is quiet because their goal isn't destruction, it's release. And for the INFJ, who feels so deeply, even letting go quietly can be one of the most courageous acts they ever perform. What makes the door slam so jarring is not just its suddenness, but the totality of it. The INFJ doesn't half-slam the door. It closes fully, decisively, and often without warning. One day, they're present, supportive, understanding, perhaps even trying one last time to explain how they feel, and the next, they are emotionally gone. It's important to emphasize that the decision to slam the door is not impulsive. It may feel sudden to others, but for the INFJ, it is the end result of a long, silent journey toward disillusionment. Every overlooked boundary, every lie, Every broken promise is remembered, not always consciously, but stored somewhere deep in the INFJ's memory, adding weight to the invisible scale they use to evaluate whether a relationship is still worth their energy. Contrary to the stereotype of INFJs being meek or passive, the door slam reveals the steel beneath their gentleness. INFJs possess a powerful sense of conviction. Once a line has been crossed, especially one tied to their core values, they cannot unsee it. Their introverted intuition synthesizes patterns and emotional truths over time, and when the pattern reveals a toxic or irredeemable situation, their extrovert feeling withdraws its emotional investment, sometimes overnight. This isn't heartlessness. It's the result of a deeply internal decision-making process that leaves no room for turning back. When the INFJ door slams, it doesn't swing back open easily, if at all. One of the most misunderstood aspects of the INFJ door slam is how much it costs the INFJ themselves. These are people who have usually spent months, sometimes years, trying to salvage the relationship. They have overextended themselves emotionally, bent their boundaries, and hoped beyond reason. The door slam is not a relief in the traditional sense. It is often a heartbreak. Many INFJs will grieve in silence, mourning not just the person they walked away from, but the emotional energy they poured into trying to make things work. They may feel alone, misunderstood, and exhausted. And yet, within that emotional wreckage, there's also a strange kind of peace, the peace of finally choosing themselves. In some cases, INFJs may wrestle with guilt after slamming the door. They may wonder if they overreacted or feel troubled by their sudden detachment. But the more emotionally healthy and self-aware an INFJ becomes, the more they understand that boundaries are not cruelty, they are clarity. The door slam is often one of the few tools they feel they have to enforce those boundaries when all else has failed. It's the emotional equivalent of burning a bridge that was built entirely on their own labor, after realizing the other person never intended to meet them halfway. Socially, this act can be isolating. INFJs tend to keep their most intense emotional experiences private, so others might not understand why they've distanced themselves from someone. INFJs rarely explain the full story. They are unlikely to air grievances in public or attempt to justify their actions to others unless absolutely necessary. They prefer quiet exits over drama. This silence, though, can sometimes be misinterpreted as coldness or arrogance. In reality, it's often a form of self-protection. INFJs know how vulnerable they are to emotional guilt tripping or manipulation, and keeping the door slam silent is a way of preserving the clarity of their decision. The beauty of the door slam, though it comes from pain, is that it becomes a milestone in the INFJ's personal growth. With time and reflection, many INFJs begin to better understand their own limits and how to honor them. The door slam becomes less of an emergency escape and more of a turning point that signals a new relationship with themselves, one where they begin to listen more to their own needs rather than overextending to meet others. Ideally, the lesson it teaches them isn't just how to end what hurts, but how to prevent future pain by being more assertive about their needs and expectations early on. There is a common misconception that the INFJ door slam is petty or dramatic, but those assumptions are often based on what is visible from the outside. INFJs usually do not make a spectacle of their emotional pain. They could be crying inside while smiling in a room full of people. When they choose to remove someone from their life, it isn't for attention, it's for emotional survival. They are deeply private, often preferring to work through their suffering in solitude. This means the outside world may see the door slam as cold or disproportionate, not realizing the emotional and psychological labor that preceded it. People on the receiving end may be left stunned, confused, or even angry, not because the INFJ didn't send signals, but because those signals were subtle, non-confrontational, and often dismissed. A particularly painful truth about the door slam is that it is often the INFJ's way of saying, "I tried everything, and you didn't see me." Because of their natural tendency to prioritize others' feelings, INFJs frequently diminish their own needs. They may hint at discomfort or express disappointment gently, hoping the other person will pick up on the message and make a change. But when that change doesn't come, when the same hurts keep repeating, the same disregard continues, INFJs begin to feel invisible. And invisibility, to someone who values authentic connection so deeply, is a wound that bleeds until it has to be cauterized. The internal process that leads to a door slam is not linear. It is filled with second-guessing, delayed decisions, and hope clinging to fraying threads. INFJs may write unsent letters in their minds, rehearse difficult conversations, or try to give the person one more opportunity to show care or remorse. They often question themselves, turning their empathy inward and asking, "Am I being too sensitive? Am I expecting too much?" This introspection, while one of the INFJ's greatest strengths, can also lead them to stay in harmful relationships far longer than they should. But once they realize that continuing to engage with someone is doing more harm than good, not just to their heart, but to their integrity, they reach a point of no return. There are rare occasions when the door can be opened again, but only under very specific circumstances. The other person must show a level of self-awareness, humility, and genuine change that is unmistakable. Even then, the INFJ is unlikely to return to the previous dynamic. Trust, once broken, may never fully restore itself. The connection might resume, but it will wear new boundaries, tighter limits, and an emotional caution the INFJ didn't have before. It is not a return to innocence. It is a cautious, conditional reunion, and one that INFJs will enter only if they are certain it will not cost them more than it gives. Being an INFJ can be tough sometimes. That's why we have put together resources that will help you navigate the INFJ life with clarity and purpose. Check out our INFJ Mastery course and INFJ ebook. You can get them using the links in the description of this video.